What's going on, everybody? It's ETAPRIME back here again. Today I am super excited because I finally got my hands on one of the best mini ITX cases on the market. I've had my eye on this for a little while, and today we're going to be building a pretty powerful PC inside of the Fractal Terra. They offer this case in a few different colors. You can go with white, black, or the Jade. I went with that Jade, and this is going to be a pretty unconventional build due to the motherboard and CPU combo we have here, but it should put down some really good performance, and this is going to turn into my main gaming PC for a little while. And as we build this up, I will go over all the parts. I'll also leave links in the description in case you want to build something like this. But when it comes to the motherboard, I went with the Minisforum BD790I. Now, if you're not familiar with this, what we've got here is a nice mini ITX motherboard that comes with the CPU pre-installed. And this one has the Ryzen 9 7945HX, 16 cores, 32 threads, and we can up the TDP. These are now available over on Amazon, and I do think it's a pretty good deal, seeing the performance this thing puts out, but you have to add your own RAM and storage, plus a fan. It does come with the mounting brackets. I'm going with the 1TB Kingston Fury Renegade and 32GB of DDR5 at 5600. This utilizes SODIMM RAM. But the thing I'm most excited about with this build is the case. Again, this is known as the Fractal Terra, and I've been doing a lot of research on it. I just love the look of it. Obviously, very small form factor. We can fit a full-size dual-slot GPU. It is adjustable inside, so you can actually go with the smaller cooler, larger GPU. They put a lot of thought into this. It's not a cheap case. They offer it in 3 different color variants at the time of making this video. But yeah, I've been eyeballing this case for a while, and if you watch my channel, you know I love these small form factor builds. Still a little larger than we're used to, going with a lot of mini PCs, but I just love the look of this thing, and it's going to fit in a lot of places that my main giant gaming PC isn't going to fit. Side panels fold right up. It does come with our GPU riser, and if we take a look in the back here, the whole interior is adjustable. That way, if you've got a thicker GPU and a smaller cooler, you can adjust these internals to fit correctly. But, you know, I've done a little bit of measuring with what I'm using. I actually am going to leave it stock right out of the box. Putting everything together here, we've got that Minisforum BD790, and I really love what they've done here. It is a mobile CPU, or APU rather, but it's a pretty powerful one, 16 cores, 32 threads. You will have to add your own fan, but it comes with the brackets that you need. I'm going with this Noctua industrial fan, and it does spin up quite fast if we need it to, but I can fully adjust that fan curve in the BIOS. This supports SODIMM RAM, so we're going with 32 gigs. Kind of wish I had a set of 64, but I think for a little gaming PC, 32 is going to be more than enough. Once everything's assembled, it looks a little something like this, and it's a very small package, so it will fit inside of most of these mini ITX builds quite nicely. And I've been looking over this Fractal case. What they've done here is pretty amazing. We've got our GPU riser over here, and I have seen some modifications online, mainly 3D printed items like raising the top up so you can add a water cooler. And I don't need to do any adjustment to the case itself because this BD790 with that Noctua fan just kind of slides right down in here. It's not going to make contact with that side panel. We've got a few millimeters there. I could come over a little bit, but I'm just going to leave it like this because I know my GPU is going to fit on the other side. And obviously, we'll need something to power this up. It's going to use an SFX power supply. And I'm going with a fully modular 700 watt power supply that I've had sitting around for a little while. I believe it's made by Cougar. It was pulled out of an older case, but I think it's going to offer more than enough for the CPU and GPU combo that I'm going with here. And it should fit right in here with the bracketing system. I personally love the way they've got this set up. It is very small form factor, but it doesn't feel super cramped. And there is kind of a lot of room in here for cable management. I could do a bit better, but I think it looks really good here. Love that black against that jade green. Got a little bit of wood grain up front here. Last thing I really need to do is actually install the GPU. And originally I was going to go full AMD with this using something like an RX 7900 GRE or something. But I decided against it. I'm going with an Nvidia card, mainly because of frame gen with all of the newer games coming out. This is the RTX 4070 Ti Super. Definitely a more expensive card, but it's going to offer really great 1440p gaming. And we can keep using this for a few years because DLSS and frame gen here is great on this 4070. Of course, Nvidia and AMD are probably going to drop new cards soon, but at 1440p, getting over 100 FPS in most AAA games is plenty for me. And another big reason I wanted to use this card is because it just fits inside of this Fractal Terra so well. So I've got everything cleaned up, and this build went together much easier than I thought it would. There wasn't any kind of modifications or anything that I needed to worry about. This Fractal Terra, in my opinion, is worth the price. The aesthetic alone is just absolutely beautiful. You know, the main reason I built this was to play games on, so I need to install Windows. I'm going to be running Windows 11 Pro, and we'll go ahead and get right into it. Alright, so check it out. When it comes to the Minisforum BD790, the motherboard we have here, we've got that Ryzen 9 7945HX with Radeon graphics. We're not going to be worrying about those because we've got that Nvidia GeForce RTX 4070 Ti Super. Now, I do wish that I had an extra 64 gigs of SODIMM RAM. We're running 32 here, but for gaming, I should be fine at 32. One thing that I like to do here is actually just kind of adjust the TDP. This board here, out of the box, will boost up to 75 watts. Now, of course, we've got 16 cores and 32 threads to power here. So I've gone into the BIOS and I've upped this to 120 watts. The fan will spin up a bit faster that way. I mean, obviously, it's going to get a bit hotter. It's not bugging me, but we can definitely get better performance out of it. Real quick, we'll just stress the CPU out. And you can see, jumps up to around 120, 122. And then comes on back down to around 100 watts. So overall, looking pretty decent. We did hit 80 degrees Celsius, but while gaming, we're not going to be stressing out all 16 cores and 32 threads. This thing is super quick. I mean, we've got some pretty high specs here. And I really did want to go with this board because of the ease of use. We've got more than enough power for AAA gaming. And when it comes to the RTX 4070 Ti Super, you can see this thing, almost maxes out at about 300 watts. I've just got Furmark running here. And even now, we're not pulling as much as we can because while gaming, our clocks are going to be much higher. So that 700 watt power supply, I mean, it's definitely going to be more than enough for this little setup here. And after getting everything set up and installed, I did run some benchmarks. Here's Geekbench 6. Single core, 2,805. Multi, 16,132. I was actually expecting a little more out of the multi-core here, given that we've got 16 cores and 32 threads, but I'm not complaining. This is some really good performance out of this little board. Checking out some GPU benchmarks, we've got 3D Mark Steel Nomad, 5,532, and this is a relatively new benchmark, so we'll move over to some older ones like Firestrike coming in with a 42,672. Finally, Time Spy with a really impressive 20,721. For the most part, I'm going to be running most of my games at 1440p ultra settings, but there are a few that I know will run really well at 4K, even without DLSS, like one of my favorites, Forza Horizon 5. 4K extreme settings, no DLSS. By the end of this run, I got an average of 124 FPS out of this game, and if I wanted a little more out of it, which I really don't need it, because I'm just going to be kind of locking this down at 120, I could always throw in a little bit of DLSS and get much more out of it. But this is plenty for me, and it looks absolutely amazing. Checking out some Fallout 4 ever since that recent update, something I've been kind of going through again. Right now we're at 4K Ultra, and we don't have any access to DLSS without any mods or anything like that. But this machine is more than capable of playing this at 4K Ultra. We got an average of 108 FPS. Horizon Forbidden West, I've been playing this a lot on all kinds of different GPUs, be it dedicated or iGPUs, and yeah, I mean, you definitely need something heavy duty to run this really well at 1440p, and even with this 4070 Ti Super, I needed to enable a little bit of DLSS. We're set to balanced right now, very high settings, and you can see that every once in a while it does get really close to going under 60. It never did, and by the end we had an average of 77 FPS. I personally don't play Fortnite, but I wanted to throw it in here. We're at ultra settings, 1440p, and I'm using the DirectX 12 backend. I'm not sure if DirectX 11 would work a little better here. I figured we'd be on up in the 200s, but I guess, with all of the updates, the game is looking pretty decent. Again, it's not something that I usually play. Here's Spiderman Remastered, and with this we didn't need any DLSS, but we also have access to frame gen, which will really up that frame rate on something a little lower end, like the RTX 4060. Even at 1440 with some DLSS on that, I've seen some decent performance out of this game. Here's the built-in benchmark for Red Dead Redemption 2, 1440p Ultra, and by Ultra we've got that bar maxed out. It's really a ton of settings that you need to mess around with unless you're using that preset. Minimum of 37, maximum of 174, and an average of 131. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 1440p Extreme, I think that's what they're calling it. It's a little over Ultra there. DLSS is set to balanced, and we are using frame gen. We had an average of 170 FPS, and our 1% lows were in the 80s. And finally, we've got Cyberpunk 2077, and I tested a few settings here. Now, I know that this game is going to run great at 1440 Ultra with no DLSS, but I tested it like that. We also enabled frame gen with no DLSS, and we set RTX to Ultra. So at the top, no DLSS Ultra settings, we had an average of 94 FPS. Frame gen is something I really love on these 4000 series RTX cards, because with that enabled, no DLSS, we jumped up to an average of 140 FPS. And since we've got an RTX card, we went to Ray Tracing Ultra. Auto DLSS with frame gen enabled, we averaged 138 FPS. I mean, it's pretty impressive with that frame gen. I mean, we gained 45 FPS just over the Ultra with no frame gen enabled. By far, the Fractal Terra is one of my favorite looking cases. I love this Jade. They also offer it in black and white. I just kind of wanted to go with that Jade because you really don't see PCs in this color. I think they did an amazing job with this case. I mean, everything was well planned out, really easy to build in, especially with that BD790. And I know that's not conventional. A lot of people are just going to use a mini ITX board with a CPU like a Ryzen 7700X or something even a little better. But I think that this does offer more than enough performance for me. And yeah, this is actually going to be my main gaming PC for a little while until I come up with something a bit better. But that's going to wrap it up for this video. I really appreciate you watching. If you're interested in putting something like this together, I'll leave links down below. And if there's anything else you want to see running on this, maybe let's say Linux, let me know in the comments. But that's it for this one. Like always, thanks for watching.